Welcome to my video review of Change Wars Chapter 9, Engaging Practice, School Leadership and Management from a Distributive Perspective. This chapter is by James P. Spillane, and if you click on any of the little links on the sticky notes, it'll take you to different parts of the video, and the little links below the author's name will take you to some of the resources that I used. Okay, so to start this video off, we're going to do what's called Crazy Eights. It's a design sprint that kind of helps you to come up with some creative ideas that will apply to what this chapter is about. I promise this will make sense, but we'll see confusing at first. So to start Crazy Eights off, you need to have a how might we statement. So basically you want to take your problem of practice, whatever it is that you're trying to address in your local setting, and put it into a how might we statement. For example, how might we improve first-generation community college transfer rates? So go ahead and take a second to write down your how might we statement. If you want to pause the video to do that, go ahead. Okay, so now what you need to get started is a blank piece of paper and a Sharpie, preferably one of the Sharpies with the flatter, like the more wide tip, but whatever you can have to draw with is great. We like the wider tip ones because when you get a fine tip writing utensil, you tend to get really caught up in the details and you don't want to worry about that. So once you have your paper and your Sharpie, you want to fold your paper up so that you have 8 squares from it. And the easiest way to do that is to go back to elementary school time and think fold the paper hamburger style 3 times, and that should give you the 8 squares that you need. So if you want to pause the video really quick and get that set up, go ahead and do that. Okay, so now let's go over the rules of Crazy Eights. This is me just trying to be really funny. The purpose of Crazy Eights is to come up with creative solutions to your problem of practice, your how might we statement. Each of us already has an innovation that we've been working on this past year, so we're not starting from scratch, but the purpose of this is to step back and look at our problem of practice and from a wider perspective and see if there are some ideas that we haven't thought of yet from having too narrow of a focus. So here are the rules. What you're going to do is I'm going to set a timer, and then you're going to start drawing out a visual to a solution to your problem of practice. You get 30 seconds per square, and you just start sketching. You don't have to be a great artist or anything, just start drawing. When time's up after 30 seconds, you have to move on to the next square no matter what, and just start drawing a new possible solution. The final rule is very important. No matter what during this time, you never stop drawing, because then you get caught up in thinking too much and wondering if it's a good idea or not. So the rule is you have to always be drawing. If you are having a roadblock, then just draw whatever you see in front of you and go from there. You just can't stop drawing solutions to your problem. So at the end of 4 minutes, you should have something that looks a little something like this. You'll have 8 different sketches of possible solutions to your problem of practice, and it will look beautiful and be a masterpiece, and you'll frame it and put it on your wall. But more importantly, it'll give you a chance to kind of look through and see if there are similar ideas or if there was a whole new idea you hadn't thought of before that might be in this. Also, I should note, it doesn't really matter what order you go in on the squares, just do whatever works for you. I tend to go left to right on the top and then move to the bottom and go left to right, but do whatever works for you. Okay, that's it. You ready? Let's get started. So for this first square, just try to draw a little visual of your current innovation and what you would do, just to get the juices flowing. "15 seconds. Okay, 3 seconds. And move to the next square. And this time try to redraw that same innovation but from a different perspective, like from another stakeholder. Halfway. Remember, keep drawing no matter what. Just keep drawing. Three seconds for square two, and switch. Halfway. Three seconds, and switch. Okay, you should be on square four now, and you might be feeling like you're running out of ideas, and this is when you just keep doodling even if you don't have an idea. You'll start to come up with some funny and crazy stuff. Okay, about 10 seconds. Three, two, one, switch, square five. If you can't think of what to draw, just draw the first thing you see, and then go from there. 15 seconds. 3, 2, 1, switch. Okay, square six. If you are needing an idea, draw your favorite number and then go from there. Three, two, one, switch, square seven. Okay, this time draw the worst idea you could come up with. Sometimes the worst idea can help you figure out what the best idea would be. Three, two, one, final square. Okay, this last square, just whatever you've got left. Maybe do the most outlandish idea. What's the most expensive, creative idea you could think of? Okay, in three, two, one, nice. Okay, so go ahead and put the paper aside. We're going to come back to that in just a little bit, and I promise it will make sense why we did that in the first place. Okay. Okay, so let's actually get into the content of the chapter. So this chapter was talking about leading and managing in school systems. So first they want to talk about what that means as a practice, and we use the term practice a lot in different fields. For example, in the medical field, you have your medical practice, there's a law practice, and then for educators, there's your teaching practice, but we don't often talk about the practice of school leadership. So to explain this, we're going to use, this is Iverson. We're going to use a little bit of a basketball analogy to talk about what they mean by practice. So Spillane does a pretty good job at breaking down the definition of practice and unbundles it. Traditionally, it's viewed more as leadership and management practices, which feels a little bit more like a noun in my mind. And he distinguishes practice in this chapter as the practice of leading and managing, which feels much more like a verb in my mind. So using my basketball analogy, I'm going to kind of show the difference between these two ways of viewing practice, and I'm sorry about the little watermark in the bottom there. So the traditional form of leadership and management practices have, in basketball, for example, would have scripted plays, routines, or actions. They would have set times and occasions in a more formal manner of when you would apply those routines or scripts. And there would be a focus on individuals in leadership roles in a much more formal sense and what their actions and characteristics should be in leading. In comparison, Spillane's definition of the practice of leading and managing is a little bit more nuanced. It recognizes that these actions and these leadership roles are taking place in unique contexts and unique situations, and so this is a little bit of a chaotic situation. For example, while we may have a set script or play we want to run in real life on the court, you don't know what your teammate will do necessarily or what the opponent will do, and so you kind of have to go with the flow in that situation. And while we may have set times or occasions when we want to apply a script or play, like being on a man-to-man or a zone defense, you have to adjust and change according to the situation, so that is constantly changing and adapting as well. And finally, the role of leaders or leadership is much more interactive by nature and can also be a little bit chaotic, and it involves all the different parties, not just the leader. So to summarize, Spillane's definition of the practice of leading and managing is that it's emergent, contextual, interactive, and dynamic. So now that we have a defined understanding of what practice is and the practice of leading and managing, let's talk through how diagnosis and design are connected to this practice. There are two main elements of diagnosis in leading and managing. So first, it's involved with problem identification. Its goal is to understand the nature, the cause of a certain situation happening in an organization or a system. The second component is that it is data informed and not data driven. So, for example, there's a quote in the book where it says, "School leaders can disagree even when they have used the same data or information. They might construct different definitions of the problem and propose different solutions for solving it. Data are not evidence. Rather, we use data to build evidence of a problem. So we need to be data informed and use it, but not necessarily data driven." The complement to diagnosis is design, which involves shaping things for an intended purpose, and it is impact focused. It's hoping to actually have an effect on a system. It's adaptive and changing, and it is purpose driven, meaning that there is a key goal assigned to the design of something. So Spillane mentions in the book that for diagnosis and design to be effective, they need to be anchored in student learning and teaching practices, which directly aligns with the purpose-driven aspect of design. Finally, diagnosis and design are iterative by nature. They are continually informing and driving the actions of one another. Spillane gives a great quote explaining the purpose for this iteration. He says, "Of course, organizational routines do not always work as intended. Hence, we have to attend to both the intended connections and the actual connections that were made." And I'm paraphrasing a little bit there. But basically, when we create a design for something, then we have to see how it actually impacts the system, and evaluating how it impacts then has us go back, diagnose the situation, and redesign. Alright, so now let's get into the framework that Spillane uses in this chapter, which is the distributed perspective framework. So I really love this quote from the book about the purpose of having a shared framework. Spillane says, "Without a shared framework, people can work together on the same issue but talk past one another, especially if they have different perspectives on an issue, even when they share a common vocabulary." This quote reminded me of what Erica was talking about with her company working with the government in Waukesha County and how they wanted to have a common vocabulary in speaking with school leaders, and I thought about how important it is to have that common vocabulary and then to incorporate that into a shared framework. So I'm going to use this picture of the Golden Gate Bridge to explain the role of these different frameworks. More commonly, leadership and management frameworks will foreground leadership styles, culture, different behaviors of leaders, and expertise as the main aspect of their framework, and then the other elements of the context in which it is used is in the background. However, the distributed leadership framework flips things around a little bit. So instead, it puts a new focus in the foreground. In this situation, it is a pug dog. But those elements from before are then put in the background: leadership style, culture, behaviors. And then instead, in the foreground, there's two key elements. One is the leader plus, and the other is practice. And the focus for this framework are those two things, and then the other aspects are in the background. They're still important, but just not the focus. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the last activity, and this activity should help you to, one, learn a little bit more about the framework and how it can apply to your problem of practice, but it should also help you out with this week's assignments where you have to write up a summary about each chapter. So I think you could use this for your write-up. Okay, so go ahead and grab your Crazy Eights paper from before. I promise I told you this would come full circle. We're going to be using this for this last part of the activity. And what I need you to do is go ahead and pause this video really quickly and pull up the link that is on this little squiggly blue thing, which is a MindMup. As soon as you have that window open, then go ahead and start the video again. MindMup is this collaborative online platform that is really helpful for getting groups of people to ideate together. And to answer your question, yes, I am just creepy enough to go find a profile picture of you online and put it there. You are welcome to change it if you want to. So if you click on your name and then go to the top menu bar, you can open up and expand under your name, and there's this little branched tree of ideas that you can fill out. Right here in blue is your problem of practice. That's where you'll put your how might we statement, and then here is where in yellow is where you'll put your innovation. So let me walk you through how we'll do that. Going back to your Crazy Eights paper, first you're going to take your how might we statement that you wrote down somewhere, and you're going to go over to your MindMup, double click on the problem of practice, and type in the how might we question that you had. So for example, mine, I wrote out, how might we improve first generation community college student retention and transfer rates? So then go back to your Crazy Eights paper, look through the different ideas that you came up with, and select one very specific idea that you want to use to apply to this framework. And most likely it will be the one that you already have an innovation for, but you can choose a really creative one if you want to as well. Then go back to the MindMup and type in what your innovation is going to be. So for me, I chose the innovation of creating a digital design thinking collaboration between community college stakeholders. Next, if you open up the tree underneath the yellow innovation box, you're going to see the two components of the framework, the leader plus and the practice aspects, which we talked about briefly here with the pug dog. And if you open up the trees under each of these categories, you'll see that there's some subcomponents under both of them. So I'm going to go through these subcomponents with you really quickly. So in the text, Spillane talks about first the leader plus aspect of his framework. And in this, he shifts the focus away from an individual leader to the system-wide interactions between leaders and followers. The leader plus aspect identifies individuals with formal roles or titles that hold them accountable for a change movement, but it also describes those people who, while they may not have a specific role, are informally involved in the change movement. And it made me kind of think of the example that we had with the lone nut and then the first followers and early adopters. So the formal leaders are those lone nuts, and they are specifically identified as leaders in an organization. But those who are first followers and early adopters are the informal people who really make that change happen. So what you're going to do is go over to your MindMup, click on the formal element of the leader plus, and then add a new nodule that lists some of the people who hold those formal titles for your problem of practice. So for me, I put down the university president, deans, and so forth. And if you want to, you can watch the video slowly to kind of see. I'm trying to show different ways so that you can figure out how to add those on. And then do the same thing. Once you have that, you can close it back up and then do the same thing for the informal. Now I'm not going to type it this time, but you can go ahead and look through to see what I put on there. So for example, I put some of the positive deviants like professors or students, or there's industry leaders. So those would be some of the informal leaders in this aspect. All right, almost there. Now let's talk about the elements of practice. So practice also has formal and informal roles. Here's an example with respect to dating. So some formal elements of practice would be things like a blind date or speed dating, like there are established ways in which you can go and meet someone, and there are formal ways in which you can meet a person. On the other hand, there can be informal elements of the practice of dating. So for example, just random ways where you could run into and meet someone. So here's Bringing Up Baby, where she trips over the log and they meet. Here's 101 Dalmatians, where they just happen to run into each other, but it's unplanned. And then here from the movie Hitch, where again, well, I guess this one's a little bit planned, but still a little bit of an informal way to meet someone in the dating practice. Using these pictures, I can also show what situational elements in practice. So those are the things that are part of the environment or the situation that can cause a practice to take place. So for example, with Bringing Up Baby, that could be the log or the fact that they're in the woods. This 101 Dalmatians could be the fact that they went to a park, it's the dogs, the leash, and then here with Hitch, it could be the pen or the fact that earlier they had to meet at a work meeting. And if you don't know any of these movies, then you'll just have to take my word for it. So for our last round at the MindMup, go ahead and switch over to the practice component of your tree here and start filling in some of the formal and informal and situational elements of your problem of practice. So for example, you can see here, formal elements related to my problem of practice would be advisors and advising programs. It could be campus visits or set programs on the campus for first-generation college students. Informal elements could be mentors, family and friends, different aspects like that. And then situational elements, I listed a lot of them. So for me it could be semester timelines, what a student's class load is or a professor's teaching load is, different work schedules, access to social media, different online facilitations, and different tensions between stakeholders. So those can both play in your favor and go against you depending. And then I'm showing here just a few other random things that you can do. Go ahead and play around with the MindMup and see if there's things that you like. For example, you can add images to go along with it. You can click into each of the little nodes and have a notes section where you can, like for example, I'm typing up here the pros and the cons for one of these situational elements. So go ahead and look through this, and maybe this is a useful tool for you. At the end of this video, I'll include links to have you go back to different parts of the video, and also if you can link out, if you have time and can link out to a survey and give me some feedback on this. I'm trying to use an online video tool to help me with my innovation, so I'd love to hear your thoughts about it if you get the chance. So thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful, and I apologize for going over a couple minutes. Okay, thanks. Bye.